Couple of things. On the items that Brian mentioned that were excluded from the RHF ECA, I wanted to point out that those things will be done under the review and approval of the California Department of Toxins and Substance Controls. Can we go to the next slide, please? Coming back up here, what I wanted to show you here was just what the site looked like, detailed area 4 looked like at its peak, and our projection of what you can expect the site to look like when we're done with all the facility removals. And as we told you the last time, these were the last 2 sets of radiological facilities that need to be removed from the site. Also, as I promised you from the last meeting, we were going to not spend as much time in front of you talking, and we will make the time available to you for comment. And at this time, we're going to open it up for comments.
Thanks. May I have a mic? My name is Daniel Hirsch, President of the Committee to Bridge the Gap. We were here a few weeks ago when there was a similar comment period on the ECA for Building 4024. And in that session, DOE violated essentially every requirement of CERCLA, NEPA, Atomic Energy Act in terms of comments. That meeting, people walked in and were handed a document they were supposed to comment on. An ad in the place in newspapers with a link to a website, the link being dead. The congressional offices had not been notified, the press had not been notified, and the ECA itself had essentially no information in it about the action that we were supposed to comment on. We are now deja vu all over again. A few minor matters have been corrected for this ECA. The one still hasn't corrected the ones from the past. We didn't call a second hearing where people could, in fact, make comments on the Building 4024 ECA after having had a chance to see it. We did not mail it out to people. Things went on the same model. But here we are today to discuss the supposed cleanup of the last building. But almost all the information that you as the public need to know has been excluded from the document you're supposed to comment on. It is a sham. It is an empty shell. And let me give a few examples here. They say that we are to comment on only 2 alternatives: cleaning it up the way they propose, or not cleaning it up at all. No other alternative is provided. The core of environmental law is taking a hard look at alternatives. That's been violated here. DOE is essentially saying my way or the highway, but they're not even telling you what my way is. There is a table in the ECA which is entitled Contaminants of Concern, and there are numbers in that table. Any normal person would presume that those were the cleanup standards that are being proposed for you to comment on. They're not. They're not. DOE says in the ECA that the actual cleanup numbers will be decided later, after your comments are over. They will look for contaminants, and if they are in a range of 10 to the minus 4 to 10 to the minus 6, all the ECA says is, quote, a risk management decision will be made. Doesn't tell you who will make it, doesn't tell you how it will be made, and it will be made after the comments are over. It's kind of like a Soviet form of democracy. You kind of pretend to vote, but you don't get to. You pretend to have comments, but they're going to do what they want after the comment period is over. They don't even define what a contaminant concern is. They don't tell you what those numbers mean. They don't relate those to cleanup standards. They simply have a table. They want you to think those are the cleanup standards, and then there's a single line, which only someone like me would know what it means, which is if they find anything over that contaminant concern, they will make a risk management decision later whether to leave it in place or clean it up. And their history is they will leave it in place. The second thing is they've told you that they are going to clean it up so this can be released for unrestricted use. Their word, over and over again, unrestricted. But in fact, they are saying it will not be for unrestricted use, because EPA requirements say that you have to clean it up to the land use which would produce the highest dose and the greatest cleanup. And in this case, that is rural residential. You heard them say that they're going to clean up to residential standards, but they didn't tell you what residential standard. They're going to clean it up to what they call suburban residential, which is 100 times higher levels of contaminants permitted than if it were rural residential, which is what the current zoning is and what the land use is around it. Current zoning is RA5, Rural Agricultural 5. If you go onto DOE's own website, under land use, it says it's zoned RA5. Under EPA rules, you have to then clean it up to that standard. And that would be 100 times more cleanup than they have even in that table. So, in fact, what they're proposing is to be able to leave a total of 10,000 times more contaminants in place than the law would normally permit. 100 times higher because they're using the wrong land use. Even though they say it's unrestricted, they're not going to consider it an unrestricted use of the sort that it's currently zoned for and used on the periphery already. And secondly, they say, even with that very high level, 100 times higher than it should be, they reserve the right, after your comments are finished, to leave 100 times higher than that. And 100 times 100 is 10,000. 10,000 times higher levels of radioactivity than the law would normally permit. But they don't disclose that to you. Let me give a couple of other examples. Oh, actually, I need to read something about that for a moment. I don't think any of you have gone and been able to look at the documents that they claim are part of the administrative record. It's essentially set up so you won't do it. I happen to have done it. And in one of the documents, they have very few, is a document called the Final RCRA Facility Assessment Report for Rockwell International Corporation, May 94, Rocketdyne Division, San Susanna Field Laboratory. And on page, there's some photographs. Photograph 50, 51, and 52. They're already in the record, so I don't have to put them in the record. I'll show them to anyone who wants to look. Let me just read you the title. Cattle Footprints at the Building 886 former sodium disposal facility. 51, a herd of cows. This is the photograph. A herd of cows was observed nearby the Building 886 former sodium burn pit. And similarly, 52, a herd of cows observed. So this is already used for agricultural purposes. The area nearby has ranches, orchards, vegetable gardens, and when you go, in fact, into their own document, in their own closure plan, the RMHF closure plan, March 2006, page 2-1, quote, the adjacent properties within 1 mile of RMHF are undeveloped and the land use is agricultural, consisting of livestock grazing. Refers to a figure 4, but unfortunately didn't include any of the figures or any of the tables in the document they placed in the public document room. By the way, they also said that they were placing the historical site assessment. But when you go into the binder for the administrative record, all they have is the first volume, which is methodology. They don't have any of the results. So that's just all hidden from you. But the point is their own records show the site is zoned rural agricultural, and that the land use around it is currently rural agricultural, and that is the land use that produces the greatest level of cleanup. But they're going to put in 100 times higher contaminant levels and then be able to go 100 times over that. And those doses would fry people who move on to the property. Immense amounts of contamination. Now, what else have they hidden from the public process? They have not let you know that what they intend to do, first of all, with the buildings, they told you that the buildings will be cleaned up to these standards. Turns out that's false. The buildings will not be cleaned up to these standards in the table. The buildings are being cleaned up, I'm guessing, to Reg Guide 1.86 levels. Yeah, Reg Guide 1.86. So even the figures that they put up there turn out to be figures for the soil, not for the buildings. But they don't tell you that. And those levels are astronomical for some radionuclide.